Welcome back to the United Taste of America podcast series. I am your host and guide, Rick K. Jones, and today is all about the state of Ohio. But before we get started, I want you to know we record a lot of these podcasts weeks in advance, or in some cases even months in advance. And I had a senior moment back in the third episode, the New Jersey episode, where I told a story about Bill Bradley running for president, and I mentioned that it was in 1980. Well, no, it wasn't in 1980. That's when my daughter was actually born. It was in the year 2000. So that was one of my senior moments here on United Taste of America. It wasn't the first, probably won't be the last. You may also notice each week I alternate shirt colors, red, white, and blue. I thought it was appropriate today with the Buckeye State to wear red today. Ohio, O-H-I-O. Area name for the Ohio River. The Ohio River is two of the four borders of the state of Ohio. Ohio was called the West. It was the West. It was the place that so many of the eastern settlers wanted to get to in the other 13 colonies. Like so many other Midwest areas, it was first explored by the French trappers. It was a big fur trading state early on. Those trappers found numerous Native American tribes, led by the largest tribe in the state of Ohio, which were the Shawnee. But they also had the Miami and the Mingos. And because of that, there were a lot of bloody battles fought in Ohio between settlers and Native Americans, especially during the French and Indians War, and later after England secured the land in 1763 with the Treaty of Paris. Again, land was set aside for the natives. That's how the Brits determined they were going to handle the Native American problem, was give them everything west of the Appalachians. Ohio, clearly fertile ground west of the Appalachians, and the American Revolution really changed all that, because one of the first states that began to be opened up after the war was the state of Ohio. You may remember the legendary George Rogers Clark. He was the hero of a lot of the Revolutionary War battles that were fought in the Ohio region, the Ohio Territory, during the Revolution. And then after the war, the wars and conflicts continued between settlers and Native peoples. A lot of the settlers came from New England and New York, but also some Southerners settled down in what we call Southern Ohio, along the Ohio River on the southern part of the state. And in many cases, Southern Ohio looks and feels like Northern Kentucky because it's that river plain area there. Ohio sent a large number of troops to the Union Army to fight in our Civil War. And then after the Civil War, there was a lot of growth in the state of Ohio in industry because of the waterways. You've got, as we mentioned, the Ohio River, but you also have Lake Erie to the north. And so a lot of plants were developed there. Standard Oil Company, the famous oil company that John D. Rockefeller owned, was founded in Ohio. Dow Chemical, Goodyear Tires, Firestone Tires, and Procter & Gamble is founded and headquartered in Cincinnati. So many just classic American business institutions and brands are from Ohio. The airplane, while we remember the Wright brothers flying the airplane in North Carolina at the Outer Banks at Kitty Hawk, the Wright brothers were from Dayton, Ohio. They originally were in the bicycle business. They manufactured bicycles, and the bicycles led them to getting into the early days of aerospace. We got a really cool musical playlist today from Ohio. The first one is OHIO by the Ohio Players. It's a great funk song that's really a lot of fun. There's a very famous song about Kent State. During the Vietnam War, there was a protest of students protesting the war at Kent State. We sent the National Guard. Unfortunately, somebody set off a firecracker, which somebody thought they were being shot at. They retaliated and shot back, and several students died. It's the classic from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young called Ohio, 4 Dead in Ohio. Cleveland Rocks is a great song about Cleveland from Ian Hunter. The Pretenders have a great song about Ohio called My City Was Gone. And then the great Jillian Welch has a wonderful song called Look It, Miss Ohio. So I think you're going to like our song list from Ohio today. The culinary history of Ohio is really a story of both farmers and immigrants. And it's the story of northern Ohio versus southern Ohio, because they're really different cultures and different types of food. Northern Ohio really kind of centers around the big city of Cleveland, which is right there on Lake Erie. And they're really famous for Polish food in that area. Sauerkraut balls, Polish hot dogs, pierogies, all kinds of wonderful Polish food. So many Poles came to work in the oil industry and in the factories and plants along Lake Erie and settled there. I keep a little little red book that I've kept for probably 40 years, where I list the favorite dishes I've eaten all over the world. And folks, my favorite dish that I've ever eaten anywhere in the world still remains number one, is from a little place in Cleveland, Ohio, an Italian restaurant called Johnny's. At Johnny's, what you want to get as an appetizer is their famous banana pepper stuffed with veal with a marinara sauce on top. Now, the thing about banana peppers is, until you eat them, you don't know how hot they are. They can be very mild, they can be medium, they can be hot. That's the beauty of not knowing what you're getting. In an order, you might get a little bit of everything. The veal, ground veal, which I love, you don't get enough, we don't serve enough veal in America as far as I'm concerned, is in there. And then it's a marinara sauce that you want to bathe in. It is like the best I've ever had. It is my very favorite dish. It's Johnny's in Cleveland, Ohio. Now, southern Ohio, a little bit different. More of around the Ohio River, river towns, a lot more rural, a lot more chicken farms, a lot more dairy farms, and a lot of German settlers came into that area. And southern Ohio is famous for called geta sausage, Goette. It's a German-style sausage, really famous in southern Ohio. Wonderful breakfast sausage that you want. A lot of Serbs came in from Serbia and settled in that area. And there's the famous Barberton chicken, which is a Serbian chicken with a lot of paprika. Really good dish. Let's go back to the gator sausage, meat and grain sausage, or what we call a mush. Wouldn't be unlike a scrapple. Again, what are you trying to do? You're trying to take every part of the pig you can get, because you're using everything, tail to snout. You're taking the kind of the leftover parts of the pig, and you're mixing it with a little bit of grain to stretch it out in a way. And this is really popular in Metro Cincinnati. It's a combination of ground pork or beef. Steel-cut oats is usually what they put in there to add the filling and spices. Again, you're trying to. So much of American food was poor people food. Food that you're trying to stretch, trying to feed your family for a week at a time. Hog killing time, it was usually across the country, was usually in January because it's cold and there's no preservatives, there's no refrigeration. And so what you want to do is you want to process the pork in any way you can. That's where you make hams that you would put in smokehouses with a lot of salt to preserve it. You would make sausage that you could preserve. You would make scrapple. You would make, in this case, the gator stuff. It's kind of like a liver mush or scrapple, again, developed by so many German immigrants. Barberton chicken Serbians began with a couple of people called Michael and Smilka Topolsky. They were Serbian immigrants who came to America at the turn of the 20th century. And again, like so many people during the Depression, they were burdened with debt and were forced to sell their family farm. So they opened a restaurant called Belgrade Gardens in 1933, and there they sold a very distinctive style of fried chicken, along with a vinegar-based cabbage coleslaw and a rice and tomato sauce side dish seasoned with hot peppers. They call this either hot sauce or most of the time they call it hot rice. And again, a lot of it's the paprika. So it's the hot peppers with the paprika in the rice. It's a wonderful dish. It can be eaten as a side dish or as a dipping sauce. And they also then make freshly cut French fries. So you got this wonderful chicken. You got this wonderful tangy coleslaw, the hot rice and French fries. That's, again, a meal that would fill you up for the day, and a very hearty meal. In southern Ohio, they're famous for ice cream. They have the very famous Grater's ice cream out of Cincinnati. That's really some of the best ice cream in the country. And Ohio is also the home of the Klondike Bar, the great Klondike Bar, vanilla ice cream covered in chocolate, one of our favorite desserts. They're also famous for a fruit that grows on the side of the road. It's called a pawpaw. You may have remember that old song, "Where, oh, where is dear little Susie? Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch. Picking up pawpaws, put them in your pocket." It's a sweet fruit, grows wild. You come home and you saute it up, and it's a classic fruit dish. But when you think about food from Ohio, and especially in the Cincinnati area, the food you most think about is chili. And in that part of it, it's chili in multiple ways. Chili really came out of the immigrant restaurateurs who were trying to expand their customer base by moving beyond what were their narrow ethnic styles of cuisine. So much of Cincinnati-style chili was led by the Greeks. And when you get it, this kind of chili is not like Tex-Mex chili or Southwestern chili. It's more of a Middle Eastern style chili that uses a lot of Middle Eastern spices. And so it's a little sweeter. It's thinner. It's not chunky. Doesn't have giant peppers in it. It's just a different style of that. There was a couple of guys, Tom and John Jeff. They immigrated from the village that's kind of the present day called Argos or Estico, Greece. And again, why did so many immigrants come to America? They were fleeing religious persecution or economic persecution and bigotry, and these were being persecuted because of the Balkan Wars. These were Greeks that were from an area that was close. And remember, the Balkan Wars was really the fight against Muslims fighting against Christian Greek Orthodox peoples in that same region. And of course, that ultimately led to the start, the Balkan Wars, the original Balkan Wars led to the start of World War I, when a Serbian assassin killed the Archduke of Austria and led us to the First World War in 1921. Well, these guys got out of Dodge and came to America, and they started making this stew with traditional Mediterranean spices And then they started putting it on top of a hot dog, which they called what? Conies. The Coney Island dog that we talked about from New York, very famous. So hot dogs across the country, hot dog stands were largely by Greeks, and Greek families became known as conies. And these guys in 1922 opened a hot dog stand next to the next to the Empress, which was a burlesque theater. Okay, you go watch a little hoochie goochie, watch a musical act, watch some girls dancing, and then you got hungry, and you went next door, and you ate there. And they named their business the Empress, from the Empress Theater. And they used the sauce to modify their traditional dish. And again, if you go eat traditional Greek food like moussaka or, salsa keema or something like that, it really is those flavors of a chili. And again, what are you trying to do? Trying to stretch it. So they serve it also on pasta, on spaghetti. And it really kind of changed the way people ate their chili. It became a top for the chili, for the spaghetti. So you got spaghetti and then the chili on top. And ultimately, people began to ask for additional things, like maybe grated cheese, or maybe onions, or maybe beans. And hence we have what we call chili 2 ways, 3 ways, 4 ways, or my favorite, 5 ways. Spaghetti, chili, beans, onions, cheese, all together. And again, this is unlike other chilies. This is more like Greek pasta sausage and spice meat that you would get in other places. And the rest is history. At one time, there were over 300, believe it or not, chili parlors in the greater Cincinnati region alone. And today, there are over 100. 100 hot dog stands, chili parlors throughout. Now, how do you make the chili? Ground beef, water, maybe some stock, beef stock, tomato paste. Now the spices are different. Cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, cloves, cumin, chili powder, bay leaf, in a soupy consistency. I like to make chili a lot. I think chili's a great dish because you can do it so many different ways. But this is really much different than, like I said, chili in the Southwest. A lot of people think it contains chocolate. It doesn't, but it has a lot of characteristics of chocolate that taste that way. And then the customary toppings are what? Cheddar cheese, onions, and beans. And those are called ways. I want it chili 2 ways, or 3 ways, or 4 ways, or in my case, 5 ways. And so a 5-way, what is it served with a side of usually? Oyster crackers. Side of oyster crackers that you can either eat separately, or I like to dump them right on top. And you get a little bit of that crunch with that chili, those onions, that cheese, and those beans. Again, in this case, you can get chili dogs that you'll eat by hand, but in most cases, you're eating this in a bowl. And so you rarely get in Cincinnati just a bowl of chili. You're going to get that spaghetti and chili then as a topping. And like I mentioned, there are over today 100 different chili parlors in Cincinnati. For our show, though, we went to one of the most famous ones of all. It's Camp Washington Chili Parlor in the Camp Washington region of Cincinnati. There was a fort there named for George Washington called Camp Washington. And because there were soldiers there, you had to start feeding the soldiers. And they began to build, in order to feed the soldiers, they began to drive livestock in proximity of the fort. And so that area, during the Mexican-American War, this was a fort that was produced during the Mexican-American War, and it produced the stockyards in Cincinnati right there. And from the meats, largely the beef, they began to make, the chili there. Camp Washington Chili was named after this neighborhood from the Mexican-American War, as I mentioned. We went to war with Mexico in 1846, and this was what they called the Ohio Regiment that were sent there. And right there on a place called Mill Creek Valley was a place for mustering. And again, it was flat land, very close to the Ohio River, and the ability to bring livestock in there from that. The Cincinnati Horse and Mule Exchange was also there. And so a lot of people feel like in certain years the chili may have been horse meat, which is a sweeter meat. They eat horse all over the world. We just don't eat a lot of horse in America, but today it's obviously all beef. But that area supplied horses and mules for the United States Army from the late 1800s until the start of the First World War. And so this is a very busy hub with a lot of men, a lot of hungry men, and a lot of ways to feed them. During the Civil War, many people called Cincinnati Porkopolis because of the stockyards and the slaughterhouses in the city and a lot of the pigs that were being slaughtered there. And in many cases, some people still call Cincinnati today Porkopolis. Camp Washington Chili proudly serves more than 1,000 cheese conies every day. And they make their chili from a local meat that's supplied to them from the local purveyor that slaughters the cows. They get fresh meat. They never use frozen meat to make their chili. They make it in gigantic vats. It's pretty amazing. There was a Greek who came from Greece, immigrated to the United States in the late 1940s, and went to work for his uncle. His name was Johnny Johnson, and he was the patriarch. He passed away last October. His daughter now runs the place. Johnny Johnson became the owner and began running Camp Washington Chili in 1951, which was a long time ago. I was born in 54, and I'm 72 years old, so he was running that for 75 years, and now, and he ran it with his wife and their family for a long time. His daughter now, Maria Papakirk, runs the place. Maria was an attorney, and her husband's an attorney too. And she likes to say she's a reformed attorney. She now runs the place since her dad has passed. You can tell about every restaurant that we visit in about 10 minutes of walking in and feeling the culture of the place. This place is just a spectacular place where they have many, many waitresses that have been there for decades, 20, 30, in some cases 40 years that have worked there. This is the story of the American dream. This is the story of an immigrant who came from Greece, went to work with his uncle, learned the trade, bought the restaurant, and they've been serving great chili in so many different ways there at this place since the 1950s. I love these stories of the American dream. It is the story of American cuisine. This is some great chili. Chili 5 Ways at Camp Washington Chili Parlor is really, really good, and it ought to be on your bucket list. So, where else should you eat in the great state of Ohio? Well, there are lots of places. There are lots of great towns in Ohio, Cincinnati and Dayton and Columbus and Cleveland and just so many different places. Again, I mentioned my little red book. And my number one dish and the number one restaurant you need to go to in Ohio is Johnny's Bar in Cleveland. Now, they have two locations, but you want to go to the original downtown location that's in a little bitty house. They serve amazing Italian food, everything homemade, great wines, great pasta, but whatever you're going to get, you got to start with the veal stuffed peppers. I first went there, my buddy Bob Vecchione. Bob ran NACTA, the National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics, the trade association, for a long, long time until he retired a couple of years ago. And Bob and Mary took me there to eat for the first time. And I mean, I knew immediately this was the best dish I'd ever had in my life. Well, unfortunately, I worried that maybe if I went back, it wouldn't be as good. But we had our friends, Aaron and Laurie, who we met on a cruise on a talc tour, who live in Shaker Heights in Ohio. They took us back to Johnny's, and the peppers were better. They were the best I ever had the first time, and they were better the second time. When does that happen? And so recently, I was back up there and went again by myself and got them again for the third time, and they were just as good as ever. Veal stuffed banana peppers at Johnny's Bar in Cleveland. Second restaurant you got to try is a place called the Buckeye Express Diner in Belleville, Ohio. It is one of those classic diners, classic diner food in an old train cars, and they have serious Ohio State memorabilia. They got all kinds of jerseys and pennants and programs and photographs and all kinds of stuff. Great diner food in a great old train car in Belleville, Ohio. And then my last is another classic hot dog place. It's in Toledo, Ohio. It's the original Tony Paco's. Now, for those of my age, you may remember the great movie and then television show MASH. And there was a character, Klinger. Jamie Farr played Corporal Klinger, who cross-dressed, tried to get out of the Army by acting like he was a woman. And he was from Toledo, Ohio. Jamie Farr, the actor, is from Toledo, and the character was from Toledo. And he was constantly talking about trying to get back out of Korea, back to Toledo to have a famous Tony Paco's hot dog. Started in 1932, Hungarian family. And they have a Hungarian dog, which again has a lot of paprika, a lot of spices in it, and it has a casing that when you bite into it, it pops. And it's just one of the great hot dogs in America, Tony Paco's in Toledo, Ohio. So those are my three from me: Johnny's in Cleveland, Buckeye Express Diner in Belleville, Ohio, and the original Tony Paco's in Toledo. So that's our show from the day, from the great state of Ohio, with the great Cincinnati-style chili at Camp Washington Chili Parlor. We hope to see you back here next week as we're going to head down the Mississippi River to Louisiana on United Taste of America.